Chapter 199-3. Sect Mission 3. Both Su Wan and Enchanting were close to Yun Shu, but there was a huge difference between them. While Su Wan was also a new disciple, she was far above Enchanting, regardless of her family background or the grade of her spirit root. Although Enchanting was superior in terms of appearance, the feeling that they gave people were completely different. In the eyes of others, there was nothing good about Enchanting other than her face, and they felt that her relationship with Yun Shu was all Enchanting's one-sided wishful thinking. Rather, they felt that Su Wan was more compatible with Yun Shu. Lu Yu uttered words of support for Su Wan as she made a plan for herself as well. Yun Shu's skills were good, and if she could work on a mission together with Yun Shu using Su Wan's relationship with him, Lu Yu believed that her score in the mission would be higher. Senior Sister Lu, these are merely our guesses. It is still up to Senior Brother Yun to choose, Su Wan said gently. According to the rules, Yun Shu and the others were to pick their team members in order of the rank of their spirit roots. Brother Yun, which candidate do you have in mind this time? Lu Xiaowen asked Yun Shu while raising a brow. Yun Shu gave a faint smile. It is all our first time participating in a sect mission. I am not very certain as well. Lu Xiaowen laughed. Brother Yun, you're too humble. Didn't you take extra care of Junior Sister Yi previously? Though I rarely see you and Junior Sister Yi interacting after entering the sect. Not many people knew that Enchanting took on a rewarded mission. Among the new disciples, only Su Wan and Yun Shu knew, but they did not tell anyone else about it. Furthermore, the new disciples were too busy familiarizing themselves with matters in the outer sect over the past half a month and never noticed Enchanting's disappearance. The only thing that everyone knew was that Yun Shu did not really interact with Enchanting in this month and that the person who was always by his side was Su Wan instead. Thus, many snickered that Enchanting did not manage to cozy up to Yun Shu. Yun Shu obviously understood the meaning behind Lu Xiaowen's words and frowned slightly. You can start selecting your team members already, the warden said. Yun Shu looked away and towards the new disciples. If there were no accidents, senior and junior brothers with yellow spirit roots would be the first to be selected. Yun Shu was still thinking of who to pick but saw Su Wan looking at him expectantly. As he thought of how Su Wan cared for him in these few days, Yun Shu, who had a kind heart, could not bear to reject her. Junior Sister Su. Yun Shu slowly announced the name of his first teammate. As Yun Shu spoke, Su Wan could not help but smile. Under everyone's gaze, she slowly walked up while looking at Enchanting from the corner of her eye with a sarcastic expression. Enchanting, no matter how good you are, the inferiority of your spirit root will not be changed. Su Wan went forward and stood behind Yun Shu, and this started discussions among many people. Everyone knew that Yun Shu only had many interactions with Enchanting and Su Wan in the outer sect. Moreover, many noticed Su Wan's affection for Yun Shu. Now that Yun Shu chose Su Wan as his team member, wouldn't Enchanting be abandoned then? In a moment, everyone looked at the leisurely Enchanting with a nosy expression. If a useless red spirit root did not have Yun Shu's protection, which group would want her? Enchanting stood calmly and did not take any of those bad-meaning gazes around her to heart. This type of mission for new disciples was of no difficulty to her regardless of which group she joined and, thus, she saw no point in worrying. Chapter 200. I did ask around about it previously. Yun Shu obviously paid attention to the sect mission matters previously. A month after the new disciples entered the sect, they would have to take on their first sect mission. These kind of missions for the new disciple were relatively easy and were basically completed in groups. Just as Yun Shu and Enchanting were talking, Su Wan, who was standing a few steps away from Yun Shu, had a dark expression. She glared right at the both of them, and a deathly cold air seemed to be hidden in her seemingly gentle eyes. Su-won originally wanted to use the opportunity to become closer to Yunshu, but she did not expect that before she walked to Yunshu's side, Yiqing would already be talking to Yunshu. Looking at their intimate behavior, Su-won's heart was as though it was chopped into pieces by a knife. Senior brother Yun's eyes were glued on Yiqing. Su-won was clearly standing behind senior brother Yun, but he did not even realize she was here. On what basis? Su-won quietly clenched her fist tightly and looked at Yiqing's exquisite side profile, wishing that she could slash Yiqing's face with a knife. She clearly tried all sorts of means for Yunshu and Yiqing to not interact with each other in this period of time. She clearly told Yunshu many bad things about Yiqing, and she never even mentioned to Yiqing that Yunshu wanted her to find him. But why was Yunshu acting as if nothing happened? Hatred and resentment filled Su-won's eyes. And it was at this instant when the teaching warden assigned the missions to the disciples. This is your first time accepting a sect mission. To ensure that you all can complete it successfully, I will appoint the more skilled people as the mission's team leader. Then, the warden looked at the files in his hands and called out a few names. Yunshu and Lu Xiuan were the most skilled amongst the new disciples and were obviously in the list of names called out. Apart from the two of them, the warden called out another 4 people and handed down the missions that they had to take on. After looking at the mission, these disciples could freely choose the other members to embark on the mission with. These 6 people were the most skilled amongst their batch of new disciples, and the difference between the disciples' skills could be seen from here. The 6 people who were called out took a step forward and stood within everyone's line of sight. Junior sister Su, senior brother Yun is also a leader for a mission. I think he will definitely choose you. Lu Yu, who was standing beside Su-won, looked at the glorious Yunshu as she beamed at Su-won, who wore a gloomy expression. Su-won returned to her senses and quickly hid away the resentment in her eyes as she smiled gently. Who knows who senior brother Yun will choose? Just now, junior sister Yi was talking to senior brother Yun, and perhaps she had already told him about this. After hearing, Lu Yu looked at Yiqing with a face of disdain. What a vixen. I heard that after she returned from the rewarded mission the other time, she did not interact much with senior brother Yun. Yet now, she is acting chummy with him. Isn't it all because she knows that she must take on a sect mission already and wants to cozy up to senior brother Yun? Junior sister Su, you have been on such good terms with senior brother Yun recently, and Yiqing cannot compete against this. There are so many rumors in the outer sect about you and senior brother Yun now. I can see that senior brother Yun treats you pretty well, and he will definitely not be bewitched by that vixen Yiqing. Su-won could not help but smile shyly when she heard that. Indeed, many disciples were talking about the relationship between her and Yunshu in this half a month. Chapter 201. Both Su-won and Yiqing were close to Yunshu, but there was a huge difference between them. While Su-won was also a new disciple, she was far above Yiqing, regardless of her family background or the grade of her spirit root. Although Yiqing was superior in terms of appearance, the feeling that they gave people were completely different. In the eyes of others, there was nothing good about Yiqing other than her face, and they felt that her relationship with Yunshu was all Yiqing's one-sided wishful thinking. Rather, they felt that Su-won was more compatible with Yunshu. Lu Yu uttered words of support for Su-won as she made a plan for herself as well. Yunshu's skills were good, and if she could work on a mission together with Yunshu using Su-won's relationship with him, Lu Yu believed that her score in the mission would be higher. Senior sister Lu, these are merely our guesses. It is still up to senior brother Yun to choose, Su-won said gently. According to the rules, Yunshu and the others were to pick their team members in order of the rank of their spirit roots. Brother Yun, which candidate do you have in mind this time? Lu Xiuan asked Yunshu while raising a brow. Yunshu gave a faint smile. It is all our first time participating in a sect mission. I am not very certain as well. Lu Xiaowen laughed. Brother Yun, you're too humble. Didn't you take extra care of junior sister Yi previously? Though I rarely see you and junior sister Yi interacting after entering the sect. Not many people knew that Yi Qingtang took on a rewarded mission. Among the new disciples, only Su Wan and Yun Shu knew, but they did not tell anyone else about it. Furthermore, the new disciples were too busy familiarizing themselves with matters in the outer sect over the past half a month and never noticed Yi Qingtang's disappearance. The only thing that everyone knew was that Yun Shu did not really interact with Yi Qingtang in this month and that the person who was always by his side was Su Wan instead. Thus, many snickered that Yi Qingtang did not manage to cozy up to Yun Shu. Yun Shu obviously understood the meaning behind Lu Xiaowen's words and frowned slightly. You can start selecting your team members already, the warden said. Yun Shu looked away and towards the new disciples. If there were no accidents, senior and junior brothers with yellow spirit roots would be the first to be selected. Yun Shu was still thinking of who to pick but saw Su Wan looking at him expectantly. As he thought of how Su Wan cared for him in these few days, Yun Shu, who had a kind heart, could not bear to reject her. Junior sister Su. Yun Shu slowly announced the name of his first teammate. As Yun Shu spoke, Su Wan could not help but smile. Under everyone's gaze, she slowly walked up while looking at Yi Qingtang from the corner of her eye with a sarcastic expression. Yi Qingtang, no matter how good you are, the inferiority of your spirit root will not be changed. Su Wan went forward and stood behind Yun Shu, and this started discussions among many people. Everyone knew that Yun Shu only had many interactions with Yi Qingtang and Su Wan in the outer sect. Moreover, many noticed Su Wan's affection for Yun Shu. Now that Yun Shu chose Su Wan as his team member, wouldn't Yi Qingtang be abandoned then? In a moment, everyone looked at the leisurely Yi Qingtang with a nosy expression. If a useless red spirit root did not have Yun Shu's protection, which group would want her? Yi Qingtang stood calmly and did not take any of those bad-meaning gazes around her to heart. This type of mission for new disciples was of no difficulty to her regardless of which group she joined and, thus, she saw no point in worrying. Chapter 202. As the disciples were being called up one by one, the teammates behind Yun Shu and the others were gradually fixed. At last, only Yi Qingtang was left. Yun Shu also specifically left a spot where he planned to invite Yi Qingtang to join at the end. However, just when Yun Shu was about to open his mouth, the warden suddenly looked at Yi Qingtang and said, Yi Qingtang, there are other arrangements for your sect mission. The warden's words instantly caused a commotion. Yun Shu, who was about to say something, was stunned as well while Su Wan could not help but break out into an arrogant smile. She could see that Yun Shu wanted to invite Yi Qingtang, but the warden did not even plan to place Yi Qingtang in this mission. Thinking about it, it was true as well. With such an inferior spirit root, which team would she not be a burden in? Yi Qingtang raised a brow slightly. She did not expect that there would be such a thing. Just as everyone was curious as to what other arrangements Yi Qingtang had, the warden waved a hand at an area not far away. Then, a tall and good-looking young disciple slowly walked out and appeared in front of everyone. Once everyone saw that disciple's face, they were all astonished. His face actually looked a little similar to Zhou Chu, the person who set up an arena to cheat them. Yi Qingtang, you will do your sect mission with Zhou Xian over here. Zhou Xian will personally tell you about the mission contents later, the warden said without expression. Zhou Xian walked forward, and his lips formed into a smile as he looked at the beautiful girl before him. Junior sister Yi, it's our first meeting. Please take care of me. Zhou Xian's appearance left many new disciples dumbfounded. What is going on? Yi Qingtang's first sect mission is actually with an old disciple. It should be known that the first sect mission was relatively easier, but missions that Zhou Xian, an old disciple, took on had many hidden dangers. Surprise flashed across Su Wan's eyes as well, but once she saw Zhou Xian's face, an evil thought appeared in her mind. Zhou Xian. Zhou Chu. These two people's faces were so similar, could it be that? The surprise in her eyes instantly turned into a gloat. Everyone still remembered how Yi Qingtang beat Zhou Chu up on the arena the other time. Yi Qingtang raised her brows slightly as she looked at Zhou Xian before her. She sneered in her heart. Isn't this Zhou Xian the older brother of Zhou Chu? She was initially curious as to why her mission was suddenly changed but did not think that someone was actually behind all of this. Looking at the devious-looking Zhou Xian, Yi Qingtang already guessed that Zhou Xian most likely bribed the warden in secret, which caused things to become the way they were right now. Senior brother Zhou, that's too polite of you, Yi Qingtang said calmly with a faint smile. Zhou Xian sized up Yi Qingtang with a scoff in his heart. Exactly like what Yi Qingtang guessed, he already knew long ago that the new disciples would take on sect missions after entering the sect for a month. Yi Qingtang's teaching warden once taught Zhou Xian as well, and, thus, Zhou Xian used this opportunity to change Yi Qingtang's mission. Disciples were forbidden from fighting amongst themselves in the sect. But if they left the sect, things would be different. If there were some injuries sustained in the mission, would they not be considered natural? Chapter 203 Zhou Xian looked at Yi Qingtang with a smile. There seemed to not be any evil intentions on his face, but there was a vicious look in his smiling eyes. He leaned forward slightly and whispered into Yi Qingtang's ears. Previously, junior sister Yi received 3 moves from my brother, Zhou Chu, on the arena, and I thought that you must be very skilled. Wouldn't it be a pity if you went on normal missions? Thus, this time, I hope that junior sister Yi will really put your best performance in the mission. Zhou Xian smiled very kindly, but every word he said emitted a frightening sense of danger. Yi Qingtang scoffed in her heard, though she did not show any expressions on her face. Please take care of me, senior brother Zhou. Zhou Xian laughed. Of course. Then he stood straight and said, I still have some matters to settle. I will take a leave first. Then, Zhou Xian turned around and left after bidding the warden goodbye. From the start to the end, Zhou Xian did not mention anything regarding the mission to Yi Qingtang. All the missions were fixed, and each team needed to discuss the contents of the mission by themselves. Yun Shu was originally worried about Yi Qingtang and wanted to check on her but was held back by Su Wan, who used the reason that they had to discuss the mission. Yi Qingtang smiled faintly as she looked at how everyone was gathered together. Then, she left and mentally prepared for Zhou Xian's accident. But before Yi Qingtang returned to her room, she saw Qin Huan standing outside the dorm with an anxious expression. The moment Qin Huan saw Yi Qingtang, he hurriedly ran up to her. Junior sister Yi, there's something I need to tell you. Be careful these few days, someone wants to harm you, Qin Huan said hurriedly. Yi Qingtang replied, Are you talking about Zhou Xian? Qin Huan was taken aback. How do you know? That Zhou Xian is Zhou Chu's older brother. He might already know that you injured Zhou Chu the other time. When I was taking on a mission earlier, I heard that Zhou Xian seemed to have looked for your teaching warden to add you into his sect mission. You must be careful. Zhou Xian is not like Zhou Chu. He is extremely insidious. Yi Qingtang laughed. He has already looked for me, and the warden had placed me in his team as well. In a few days, I will have to go on a mission together with him. Qin Huan was stunned when he heard Yi Qingtang. His expression changed, and he muttered a curse. I knew that bastard Zhou Xian was sinister. I didn't think that he would take action so quickly. You must be more careful. Zhou Xian has many means and tricks. He does not dare to do anything to you in the sect, but using this mission, he will definitely not let you off easily. I think, how about you find an excuse to reject this mission? Qin Huan could not help but be worried about Enchanting. In the outer sect, Zhou Xian's abilities were not considered weak. Although Qin Huan knew that Enchanting was skilled, it was still too much danger for Enchanting to go on a mission together with such an insidious person like Zhou Xian. How can a sect mission be rejected? Enchanting replied. Qin Huan's shoulders slumped down immediately. Sect missions were missions that must be done. After being appointed a sect mission, one must proceed to complete it, and there was simply no way of rejecting it. How about? I'll ask senior brother Gu to talk to Zhou Xian. Qin Huan suggested. Gu Yanqiu had some status amongst the outer sect disciples, and, perhaps, he might be able to restrain Zhou Xian. I'll go look for senior brother Gu now. Don't worry, junior sister Yi. Then, he immediately turned around and sprinted away without waiting for Enchanting's reply. Chapter 204. Enchanting saw how Qin Huan ran away so quickly and was at a loss of whether to cry or laugh. If Zhou Xian was so easy to persuade, Gu Yanqiu would have gone to settle the matter right when he heard the news. Enchanting could not stop Qin Huan and could only let him go. Enchanting more or less knew what Zhou Xian was thinking of. There were often deaths when disciples were out on missions. Even if they accidentally lost their lives in a battle, the sect would not investigate too deeply into what happened. Enchanting returned to the room with that thought. It was rare that Lin Long was also in the room today. Enchanting nodded at Lin Long. She saw her and then looked at the silver wolf which was sitting below the window. When the wolf met Enchanting's eyes, something seemed to flash across its green orbs, and it immediately turned away before Enchanting sensed it. Enchanting always felt that her little baby was too shy. Every time she massaged it, it always fell out with her. She was about to caress the wolf, but Lin Long, who had always been silent, suddenly called Enchanting. Junior sister Yi. A rather aloof female voice sounded from behind Enchanting. Enchanting stopped in her tracks and looked at Lin Long, who suddenly said something. Senior sister Lin. Is there anything? Enchanting usually did not spend a long time in the dorm, and even if she returned, she was mostly with the silver wolf. Lin Long had an aloof personality, and the two of them did not really interact with each other. The only time they talked was the day when Enchanting just moved into the dorm. Lin Long had an indifferent look on her face. She stood up from her table and placed a file in Enchanting's hands. Enchanting looked at Lin Long a little confusedly. When she took a look at the file, she actually realized that it was the file for a sect mission. Why did she suddenly pass her this sect mission file? Return it back to me before tomorrow. Lin Long returned to her seat and took up a book to read after leaving Enchanting with such an unclear sentence. Enchanting was really at a loss and did not know what was Lin Long trying to do, but she still flipped through the file in her hand. And this surprised her immediately. At the last part of the file, there was a line written clearly, Participants, Zhou Xian, Lin Long. Enchanting. Apart from these three names, there were two other foreign disciples' names. Enchanting suddenly looked up. Although she was looking at Lin Long's cold side profile, her heart was warm. Lin Long was also in Zhou Xian's sect mission and probably already noticed that something was off, thus, she chose to hand this file to Enchanting. While Enchanting was not afraid of any difficulties that Zhou Xian would make, it was inevitable that she would fall for Zhou Xian's schemes if she did not familiarize herself with the mission contents before going on the mission. Lin Long's move indeed resolved Enchanting's urgent worries. Yi Qingtang's grip on the file tightened as she spoke to Lin Long gently. "Thank you, Senior Sister Lin." Lin Long looked at Yi Qingtang without emotion and responded with an almost unnoticeable nod. Then, she returned her focus on the book in her hand. Yi Qingtang immediately walked to her table with a file in her hand without forgetting to pinch the wolf's ears, which caused the wolf to shoot an annoyed glare at her. Yi Qingtang chuckled after having her way and then focused on the mission file. The mission which the sect appointed to Zhou Xian and the rest was to investigate the tragic case of the extermination of a family. Chapter 205. Every sect had many powerful forces which depended on them. These forces offered worships to the sect regularly, and the sect would give them protection. For the mission that Yi Qingtang and the rest were going on this time, they were to go to a mountain village which was under Xianling sect's protection, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had attached itself to Xianling sect for a long time, and it had certain fame. It was considered a pretty good family clan. However, it was met with an unexpected calamity a month ago. In just a night, all 360 people in the village were murdered, and there was no clue left behind by the murderer. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village worshipped Xianling sect, and normal forces did not dare to massacre everyone in it. Now that the entire village was massacred within a night, it was as good as a slap in Xianling sect's face. Thus, Xianling sect had to send disciples to investigate the tragic case. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. In her previous life, there was a hubbub about Spirit Condensation Mountain Village incident as well, but she had never heard that the killer was found. It was definitely not one man's doing to be able to massacre over 300 people in a night. Yi Qingtang read through the file detailedly and realized that the clues given were very vague. Apart from the information of the village master's family, there were simply no leads in this tragedy. Yi Qingtang memorized all the information on the file and returned it to Lin Long. When Lin Long received the file back, she was a little surprised as she looked up at Yi Qingtang with a little suspicion. Yi Qingtang already finished looking through it in such a short time. "Have you finished looking through it?" Lin Long could not help but ask. Yi Qingtang nodded. Lin Long did not say anything further and kept the file as though nothing happened at all, and she looked down at the book in her hand. Yi Qingtang knew that Lin Long was cold on the outside but warm on the inside and was unwilling to disturb her. Thus, she went back to her area. All the disciples' missions were already allocated, and what was left was for them to make preparations. The new disciples were rather nervous since it was their first time to do a mission, and, thus, they discussed for a long time. On Yi Qingtang's side, Lin Long did not like talking, and it was even more impossible for Zhou Xian to tell her anything. Hence, she was very free, and she took out a floating pagoda to nourish her spirit root. It had been a month since she entered the sect, and she clearly felt that her spirit root seemed to have become stronger. During the sect assessment, her spirit root had traces of making a breakthrough to an orange spirit root. In this 1 month, she already felt that her spirit root had gone through drastic changes quietly. Using the time when no one noticed, Yi Qingtang turned around and revealed the spirit root in her palm. A light shone. At that instant, the spirit root in her palm was covered by a large patch of orange, and there was only a tiny trace of red at the tip of the spirit root. Yi Qingtang saw that the spirit root was about to be upgraded to an orange color, and happiness filled her heart. She closed her hands, and the image of the spirit root faded away. A steadfast expression emerged in her smiling eyes. The sect was surging with spirit energy, and the rate of growth of her spirit root here was way faster than that when she was in Lin Town. In at most half a month, she was very certain that she could raise her spirit root to an orange spirit root. Yi Qingtang's eyes twinkled. She, who was focused on upgrading her spirit root, did not notice that when she revealed her spirit root just now, the silver wolf in the corner was watching everything. When it saw that the color of Yi Qingtang's spirit root was about to turn orange, a light flashed across its eyes silently. Chapter 206. The night was silent. The faint moonlight entered from the window and was cast on the silver wolf's body. In the silence, the silver wolf quietly stood up, and its slender limbs allowed it to jump up onto the bed easily. Its deep eyes landed on Yi Qingtang's face. A small black ball of fog emerged out from Yi Qingtang's chest. It wriggled a little out from the fluffy blanket and looked agitatedly at the mighty wolf above it. "Would-be father, have you finally come round? Are you finally going to sneak an attack on mother in the middle of the night?" The little black ball was so excited that its voice trembled unconsciously. It had already been some time since its would-be father came to its mother's side. However, the wolf just remained at a side without saying anything the whole day and completely did not know how to get closer to its mother, which really worried it. The silver wolf swept a cold glare at the little black ball, which immediately hid in Yi Qingtang's arms. "I am saying this all for your own good. Otherwise, when will you be able to have a baby with mother?" mumbled the little black ball softly. The silver wolf's gaze sharpened, but when its eyes landed on Yi Qingtang, the sharpness in its gaze quietly turned into a complicated expression. When it looked at Yi Qingtang's hands, which were lying outside the blanket, its brow was slightly raised. It could not help but recall the image of its body being carelessly touched all over by this pair of hands in the past few days. The silver wolf slightly shook its head and completely cleared that depressing image out of its mind. It slowly raised its paw and placed it on Yi Qingtang's abdomen lightly. A faint light from the silver wolf's paw slowly passed through the blanket and into Yi Qingtang's abdomen. "Oh! Would-be father, is this a special copulation method?" The little black ball secretly peeked out from the blanket, and its eyes were dazzled with stars when it saw the silver wolf's affectionate action. The silver wolf froze as it cast a cold glance at the little black ball that said shocking things, wondering if it should squeeze the little black ball to death with a paw. Perhaps it was because of the fact that the silver wolf stiffened and the strength it exerted changed. Yi Qingtang suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She opened her eyes sleepily and looked at the silver wolf standing on its bed with sleep in her eyes. The silver wolf did not expect Yi Qingtang to suddenly wake up and immediately froze. However, don't play around. Tired, Yi Qingtang, who was still drowsy from her sleep, did not even notice what the silver wolf had done to her. Her hands stretched out to hug and press down on the silver wolf's head while her slim legs flipped out from the blanket and laid across the silver wolf's body. With both her hands and legs, she directly hugged the furry silver wolf in her arms and even rubbed her head on the silver wolf's face in extreme satisfaction. "Be good, let's sleep." The silver wolf was hugged tightly by Yi Qingtang's octopus-like position. With a slight trace of movement, Yi Qingtang, who was in her sleep, hugged it even more tightly instead. The silver wolf could not do anything. The little black ball still wanted to take a peek but was hit by the silver wolf's paw. The silver wolf looked at Yi Qingtang's sleeping face, which was close at hand, and let out an almost inaudible sigh. It finally closed its eyes, and its body, intentionally or unintentionally, leaned against Yi Qingtang. The little black ball which hid back into the heart of the demon god trembled in excitement. Its would-be father and mother were finally sleeping on the same bed. Mother will be able to have a baby very soon. Haha, so exciting. Chapter 207. The preparation time for a sect mission was very short, and they had to set off the next morning. When Yi Qingtang woke up, she saw that the silver wolf, which was hugged tightly by her, was looking at her with a numb expression. Yi Qingtang was a little shocked. But very quickly, Yi Qingtang returned to her senses and changed her clothes nimbly. And that scene was on full display in front of a certain someone. The silver wolf's lips twitched slightly, and it instinctively looked away, although it acted to look at her carelessly. Too skinny. A little chubbier would be better. Enchanting did not even notice the silver wolf's thoughts and took her things after changing. She patted the silver wolf's head and said, "Wait for me to return obediently. I will ask senior brother Qin to help me feed you." After that, Enchanting left the room without waiting for the silver wolf to react. She did think of bringing the silver wolf on the mission with her, but because this mission was specially prepared for her, Enchanting did not dare to risk bringing the silver wolf. After leaving her dorm, Enchanting only felt that her body was exceptionally light today and that the abdomen area where her spirit root was at was emitting a faint warmth. It was a very interesting feeling. Could it be that the spirit root is about to break through? Enchanting was very curious as well. She obviously felt that she still needed half a month's time, but why was it that her spirit root had traces of a breakthrough after just one night of sleep? Without thinking any more, Enchanting immediately went to look for Qin Huan to ask him to look after the silver wolf on her behalf during this period of time. Afterward, she left the sect. Outside the sect, many teams were already gathered. Some teams had already set off. Enchanting saw Lin Long's figure from a distance away and immediately walked in that direction. "Senior Sister Lin." Enchanting greeted. Lin Long nodded slightly, and her eyes stopped on Enchanting for a while. She had a feeling that the aura around Enchanting was a little different today, but she could not point out the difference at the moment. Right at that instant, Enchanting heard noisy footsteps and a sarcastic voice. "Senior Brother Zhou, why must you bring a useless new disciple on this mission? I think that this group of new disciples don't know anything at all. Even if we bring them, they will just be a burden. How about you rethink it?" A disciple who looked about 20 years old was beside Zhou Xian, and he mumbled in dissatisfaction. Zhou Xian came right after. Other than the person who spoke just now, there was another disciple who was appointed this mission beside Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyes quickly landed on Enchanting as though he completely did not notice what the junior brother beside him meant. He said with a smile, "She would require a certain amount of training as a new disciple anyway. Since we are senior brothers, we should take care of her. Moreover, this little junior sister's spirit root is not good. If I don't invite her, other new disciples might not be willing to go on a mission together with a red spirit root." Red spirit root? It can't be. Those two disciples were shocked when they heard the three words, red spirit root. A new disciple was already useless enough, and it turned out she was still a red spirit root? Was that not the same as a useless piece of trash? Zhou Xian's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was enough for Enchanting and Lin Long to hear clearly. When Zhou Xian finished his sentence, he already appeared in front of Enchanting. Enchanting's lips curled into a sneer. "Really, thank you for worrying, senior brother Zhou." Chapter 208. Zhou Xian chuckled. "Of course. Since we are from the same sect, I will definitely be worried about you." A cold light thoughtlessly flashed across his eyes when he finished speaking. However, the other two disciples became even more dissatisfied upon hearing Zhou Xian's words. Sect missions were different from rewarded missions. If rewarded missions were a failure, the disciples would lose some time at most and would not receive any other punishments. However, if it was a mission appointed by the sect, it had to be completed. Otherwise, the disciples would be reprimanded by the warden and punished correspondingly once they returned to the sect. Thus, participating disciples were exceptionally meticulous when they were doing sect missions as they were feared that a failed mission would negatively affect themselves and the sect. Those two disciples sized up Enchanting. Apart from her beautiful face, they despised everything else about Enchanting. "Junior Sister Yi, it's been a month since you entered the sect. Have you been cultivating heart? Are you familiar with the basics of the Shantian swordplay already?" A disciple asked meanly. He did not care about Zhou Xian's reasons for adding this new disciple into the team and was only concerned about whether he could complete his mission. The young girl before him looked weak and did not look like she had the ability to complete the mission. Even if such a person followed them, not putting in any effort was the greatest contribution already. If she was a hindrance in their investigation, it would really be a big problem. How could Enchanting not hear the harshness in the person's words? She was very clear that all of this was intentionally created by Zhou Xian. These disciples may not know about Zhou Xian's objectives, but they hated her because of Zhou Xian's words. Even if she had an accidental death in the mission, these two disciples would probably not even ask about it. Enchanting sneered in her heart, and a sharp look flashed across her eyes as she looked at Zhou Xian's face, of which he concealed his mocking expression. I am asking you a question, did you hear me? As a junior sister, how dare you ignore a senior brother's question? Do you have any manners? That disciple who did not hear Enchanting's reply immediately frowned unhappily and instinctively wanted to grab her shoulder. A smile passed by Zhou Xian's eyes when he saw the disciple making things difficult for Enchanting. These two junior brothers were specially selected out from the outer sect by him. They had an arrogant and self-conceited nature. Even if he did not openly do anything to Enchanting, Enchanting would already be troubled just by the two's verbal attacks. However, as that disciple stretched his hand out, Enchanting suddenly looked up. Her eyes were obviously smiling, but the coldness in her eyes caused his hand to freeze in midair. He did not know why either, but he felt as though he fell into an ice cellar when he was stared at by her. Senior brother, you're caring too much. Enchanting scoffed. If you don't want to do the mission, then get lost quickly. Stop wasting time here. Lin Long, who had remained silent all along, suddenly walked up to stand before Enchanting and looked at the troublemaking disciples coldly. That disciple saw Lin Long standing in front of him with a cold expression and was taken aback immediately. Fear flashed across his eyes as he said rather guiltily, Senior Sister Lin. Chapter 209. Lin Long's sudden speech shocked Zhou Xian, who was waiting for the drama to ensue. He stood up and spoke in a tone different from the arrogant one he was using when talking to Enchanting. Junior sister Lin is right. It is time for us to set off now as well. The other teams have already left. If we continue being like this here, we would really waste time. Zhou Xian spoke so righteously, but little did anyone know that everything that happened before was all part of his plan. The only thing that surprised him was that Lin Long, who had always been cold and aloof, suddenly spoke up for Enchanting. Lin Long looked at Zhou Xian coldly and then turned around to walk down the path to heaven. With Lin Long's warning, the other disciples did not dare to waste any more time then and walked down the path to heaven after giving Enchanting an annoyed look. Zhou Xian walked slightly slower. After the three of them were a distance away, he walked past Enchanting and said in a volume that only the two of them could hear, Enchanting, I remember your kindness for treating my younger brother, Zhou Chu, that way previously. Enchanting narrowed her eyes, and her lips tugged up into a seeming smile. So, that good-for-nothing Zhou Chu is actually senior brother Zhou's younger brother. Once he heard the words, good-for-nothing, Zhou Xian's face darkened immediately. He glared at Enchanting with fury in his eyes. Good for nothing. You are a red spirit root trash. What right do you have to call others good for nothing? Enchanting's smile deepened. She tilted her head as she casually glanced down at the sword hung on Zhou Xian's waist. What a pity, your younger brother can't even crawl up after being beaten by me, a red spirit root. You! Zhou Xian's expression changed. Enchanting suddenly looked up, and her clear eyes directly met with Zhou Xian's. He is clearly a disciple who cultivated for many years in the fist faction but had to lay in bed for days after being beaten by me, a new disciple who just entered the sect for a few days. Senior Brother Zhou, in your opinion, how would I dare to snatch the title of being a good-for-nothing from your younger brother? Zhou Xian's face turned blue. He originally thought that Enchanting would not dare to be too insolent after he established an imposing air for himself. Yet, it was as though this woman's mouth was full of poison, and every sentence she said hit him right in the heart. Enchanting, the days ahead are long. Don't say that I didn't remind you. There are many dangers in sect missions. You better take good care of yourself. Zhou Xian left her a sentence coldly and walked down the path to heaven, unwilling to waste time talking to Enchanting, who had the gift of gab. Enchanting looked at Zhou Xian's back view with a seeming smile and looked down to hide the murderous expression which emerged in her eyes for a second. Take good care of yourself. Only that, the one who needed to take good care themselves was not her but Zhou Xian. A murderous smile hung on her lips as she walked down the path to heaven casually. How could a devil from hell be offended by an ordinary person as he pleased? At the same time, after Enchanting just left, Qin Huan remembered what Enchanting entrusted him with and prepared a plate full of beef as an offering to the wolf which Enchanting babied. However, once Qin Huan walked into Enchanting's room, he was immediately dumbfounded to see an empty room. There was not a trace of the wolf. Where is the wolf? In a moment, Qin Huan felt as though the sky was going to fall. Enchanting just left, but the silver wolf disappeared already. If Enchanting returned after finishing her mission, wouldn't he? Chapter 210, Qin Huan went berserk. Without caring about the beef in his hands, he sprinted away while screaming. Senior Brother Gu. This is bad. Junior Sister Yes Wolf disappeared. Help me to find it, please CEE. At the same time, a tall man was pacing up and down the woods at the foot of the cliff below Xianling's sect. Worry and anxiety were written all over his face. This Lady Yi. She kidnapped His Highness just like that. How can I rescue His Highness without alarming the Xianling sect? Lady Yi, you are being abandoned, do you know? Mu Su lingered outside Xianling's sect for half a month and was about to go insane. There was only one way to the sect, which was the path to heaven. Although he was completely able to fly up to Xianling's sect on his own, doing that would definitely alarm everyone in Xianling's sect. Mu Su had a special identity, and if he suddenly appeared in Xianling's sect, there would be a big stir in Xianling's sect. Then, it would take him a lot of effort to find an excuse to deal with those oldies in Xianling's sect, much less be able to search for someone. There was no way he could tell the Xianling sect people that the noble and holy palace lord of the Antiquity Palace was forcefully abducted by their outer sect disciple, right? And he was even being abducted in a freaking animal form. If such word spread, all those old elders in Xianling's sect would definitely be shocked. Moreover, if His Highness' identity was exposed, there was no doubt that His Highness would behead him. On one hand, he wanted to bring His Highness back, but on the other, he could not let anyone find out about it. Mu Su was so worried that he dropped a bunch of hair, yet he still had not found a reliable method. Thus, he could only stand around and wait for His Highness to leave Xianling's sect on his own. After all, with His Highness' skill, Xianling's sect's defense and perception were as good as non-existent. However, half a month passed. Mu Su felt that hope was getting increasingly slimmer. Just as Mu Su was weighed down with worry, he suddenly saw a group of Xianling sect disciples coming down from the path to heaven and was shocked when he saw a familiar face walking past him. Enchanting slowly walked down the path to heaven, got on a horse that was already prepared for them, and left with a few other Xianling sect disciples. Lady Yi has left. Su watched Yi Qingtang leave and trembled in shock as he did not even see a silver wolf by Yi Qingtang's side. Lady Yi abducted His Highness, but why was she going out alone now? Where was His Highness? Your Highness, you must know better. You must not be reluctant to come back after being abducted to be the wife of a bandit chief. Even if you want to woo Lady Yi, you don't have to do it now, Su mumbled perplexedly. Before he finished his sentence, he felt a gush of cold air from behind him. Wife of a bandit chief. A rather low voice suddenly sounded behind Su. Once Su heard that voice, happiness filled him. He turned around and saw Han Xiaoming, whom he had been away from for a long time, standing behind him in his attractive human form. Su almost burst out crying there and then. Your Highness. You're back. Su wiped a bitter tear away and was only this close from hugging Han Kangming's leg. However, there was a strange look on Han Kangming's face. His cold eyes slowly looked at Su, and he said softly, "What did you say just now?" Chapter 211. With that said, Su's legs suddenly turned jelly. What did he say? He actually said that His Highness was a wife of a bandit chief. And it was even heard by His Highness. There was no way he would get by the days. Your Highness, listen to my explanation. Su really was about to cry as he looked at Han Xiaoming. Had he known that His Highness would appear at that time, he would definitely not dare to ramble on randomly even if everyone lent him their courage. Your Highness, why did you not appear earlier nor later but right at that time? Did you really not appear to torture me on purpose? Su was still thinking about how to make His Highness pardon him from death, but he noticed that Han Kangming's eyes did not even stay on him at all, they looked right over him and at the little figure which was riding away in the opposite direction. Is His Highness looking at Lady Yi? Su's heart shook. He faintly sensed that the eyes that His Highness were looking at Yi Qingtang with were a little different from their initial coldness. Could it be that, towards Lady Yi, His Highness really developed feelings after spending time together, in this half a month? Your Highness, are you feeling better? Su asked cautiously. Han Xiaoming turned into animal form previously because of the surge of the aura of the evil. Now that he could return back into a human form, it seemed that there should not be any big problems anymore. It is all right. Han Xiaoming replied. Su heaved a sigh of relief but did not dare to speak carelessly again, as he was afraid that Han Xiaoming would behead him once he remembered what he said about being the wife of the bandit chief. On the other side, Yi Qingtang was on their way to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village with Lin Long and the rest. After a long day of traveling, the group stopped their journey as night fell. They lit a fire in a forest by the road and rested. Senior Brother Zhou, the village master of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, is skilled, and there are a large number of highly skilled people in the village protecting the village. How could it disappear just like that? A disciple could not help but question after pondering about the case. Zhou Xian replied. This is hard to say. With over 300 people dying in a night, it was impossible for the surrounding people to not know of such a big commotion. Furthermore, that entire area is under the influence of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. If there was anything, the people outside the mountain village would definitely not sit still and do nothing. However, the report to the sect did not mention this. I think, perhaps the other party might have poisoned them in secret. Over 300 people were killed in a night in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and it could be said that the amount of blood within the village could form a river. Yet, no one outside the sect realized it, and this was a little strange. People nearby Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had investigated the matter before as well, but there was still no clue. Hence, they had no choice but to request Xianling's sect for help. Could it be a vendetta? Can't be sure. Zhou Xian and the two other disciples chatted by the fire. Lin Long had a quiet personality, and, thus, she only sat at his side while reading the file without saying anything at all. And because of what Zhou Xian deliberately said previously, the other two disciples disliked Yi Qingtang. On the journey, they were unwilling to speak to Yi Qingtang and treated her as though she did not exist. During the conversation, Zhou Xian purposely looked up casually at Yi Qingtang, who made her own fire, and his lips formed into a sneer. Yi Qingtang, cherish your limited days left. Once we reach Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, I will bury you together with those 300 dead souls in the village. Chapter 212. On the journey, Zhou Xian made things difficult for Yi Qingtang both covertly and overtly but never really attacked her. He merely used words to lead the two disciples who were dissatisfied with Yi Qingtang's spirit route to give Yi Qingtang some attitude, although she completely ignored their sarcastic and discriminating gazes. Very obviously, Zhou Xian did not plan to attack Yi Qingtang on the road. Although they left Xianling's sect, killing off a fellow disciple would require a safe and sound opportunity. Zhou Xian was not willing to let others have something on him. Thus, his target had been locked on the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village from the very start. There was the main field for him to deal with Yi Qingtang. After an arduous journey, the 5 people finally reached Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Plants were flattened on a tall mountain, and there were houses situated from the foot of the mountain all the way to the peak. This entire mountain was under Spirit Condensation Mountain Village's possession, and everyone who resided there was a part of forces affiliated to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. With one look, one could see that there were hundreds of families living there. Yi Qingtang and the rest had just reached the foot of the mountain, but their Xianling sect uniform attracted the attention of the people nearby the mountain village. In no time, an old man and a handsome young man approached them quickly. Sorry for not coming ahead to welcome you as we were unaware of your arrival. Do pardon us. That elderly lifted his clothes and knelt before the 5 teenagers on horses without caring about seniority. The young man beside the elderly immediately followed the elderly and knelt with his head hung low as well. Similarly, the surrounding citizens knelt down earnestly in awe and respect on both sides of the Xianling sect disciples. The reverence of a sect was simply not what a normal person could offend. In the eyes of ordinary citizens, those who entered a sect were mighty figures standing on top of the clouds, holy and could not be infringed. Zhou Xian and the rest had been in the sect for a long time and were already used to such a grand greeting. This was how noble a sect disciple was in the eyes of normal people. Moreover, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was originally reliant on Xianling's sect, and, thus, the people were even more reverent towards them. Rise. We are ordered here to investigate the tragedy in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Which of you is the current person in charge? Zhou Xian, who was sitting on a horse, glanced across the group of people before him. That old man slowly rose and stepped forward. I was originally the apothecary of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village and am considered the person in charge of this place right now. This is... He raised his hand and pointed to the silent young man beside him. This is the adopted stepson of the village master, Wu Zheng. We have been waiting for you all for a long time. Please do us, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, justice. Of course. Zhou Xian replied proudly. You all must be worn out from the journey. We have already prepared food and drinks. You all can dismount and rest for a while understanding the situation here, the apothecary said respectfully. Zhou Xian nodded slightly. After exchanging a look with the other disciples, he immediately dismounted and headed to their destination with the company of the apothecary and Wu Jing. Yi Qingtang walked beside Lin Long at the tail of the team and looked at the surrounding citizens' faces casually. Perhaps it was because a bloody massacre happened, fear and uneasiness were prevalent in the citizens' eyes, though they faked a calm front. Only after they saw Enchanting and the others did that look of uneasiness fade away slowly, though their ash-pale faces were enough to prove the trepidation they felt over the past few days. Chapter 2:12. 1. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. 2. The apothecary brought the 5 of them to their destination. The uneasy citizens lingered outside the door and were not willing to leave. Their fears seemed to finally dissipate only when they were standing close to these sect disciples. What exactly happened to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village? Zhou Xian questioned straight to the point after sitting down. Although he wanted to make use of this chance to get rid of Enchanting, he did not forget the mission he was tasked to as well. Otherwise, even if he killed Enchanting, he would still be punished by the sect should he not complete the mission. Furthermore, he did not think that killing Enchanting would be difficult. After hearing the question, the apothecary could not help but sigh heavily. This is a long story. That day was our village master's 50th birthday celebration. There were many guests that night, and the celebration finally ended at midnight. After a whole day of labor, everyone was tired by nighttime and went to rest after sending the guests off. However, no one would have thought that an accident happened that very night. Enchanting listened from aside quietly. What the apothecary said was the same as the information mentioned in the sect file, and there were no special clues. Can you bring us to look at the situation in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village first? Zhou Xian wanted to continue questioning, yet Enchanting suddenly requested to take a look at the scene of the accident. He frowned displeasingly, but on second thought, they had to inspect the scene as well. Thus, he did not say anything. The apothecary replied, "Sure. We did not dare to touch anything in the mountain village so that you all can inspect the scene closely when you all are here." Then, the apothecary stood up and led the group towards Spirit Condensation Mountain Village along with Wu Jing. Zhou Xian and the other 2 disciples took a step first and walked at the front. Rather, it was Lin Long who, intentionally or unintentionally, walked at a speed which coincidentally matched with Enchanting's pace and was walking right beside Enchanting. Enchanting had noticed this long ago when they were still on the road. Senior sister Lin always instinctively maintained the same pace as her, and even if they were in a hurry, senior sister Lin was never too far away from her. Although Enchanting did not talk much to this cold senior sister during the journey, Enchanting noticed Lin Long's subtle actions. Enchanting had a feeling that Lin Long seemed to have sensed that Zhou Xian was going to harm Enchanting, which caused her to keep maintaining a close distance with her on purpose. To this, Enchanting felt an inexpressible warmth. In her previous life, Lin Long was also like this. She didn't talk much normally and had a detached personality but would lend a hand at critical times. As she pondered, they had already reached the main entrance of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Before entering the door to the mountain village, they saw large patches of blood flowing out from under the door. The blood had already dried, but the strong blood smell traveled into their noses along with the wind. Contrasting against the black door, the blood which seeped under the door was like a giant tongue of a demon. This is it. However, please be mentally prepared. The situation inside is not too good, reminded the apothecary before he opened the door. Zhou Xian frowned a little, obviously not putting the apothecary's words to heart. It was merely a bloody scene. He had gone on many missions before. How would he have seen little of such situations? "Open the door," Zhou Xian said. Chapter 2:12. 2. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. 3. The apothecary hesitated for a moment and finally nodded at Wu Jing beside him. Wu Jing went forward quietly and pushed open the tightly shut door. The moment the door was pushed open, a strong blood smell greeted them. The smell was so intense that one could faint from it. The scene inside made the calm Zhou Xian shudder and breathe with difficulty. Hundreds of heads were piled in the courtyard of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village like a tower of skulls. Crimson dried blood hardened on the almost decomposed skulls. Over 300 skulls were piled in the courtyard so glaringly. Crimson blood covered the entire courtyard as though a demonic blood-colored flower was in full bloom, while the hundreds of skulls formed the core of the flower of death. Along with the intense smell of death in the air, the image was imprinted in everyone's eyes. In an instant, Zhou Xian and the rest turned pale. Even if he knew that Spirit Condensation Mountain Village would be gory, he did not expect that skulls would be piled up like mountains. On the decomposed skulls, worms were crawling around inside the rotten flesh, while eyeballs that were left half-eaten by crows hung in the eye sockets as though they were still looking at the group at the door. It was freaky and twisted. The mixture of the rotting smell and blood smell caused one's stomach to churn. Blarg, a Xianling sect disciple, vomited at the smell. Zhou Xian's face lost all color. Only until then did he finally realize why the apothecary added that one sentence. Even for him, a self-praised, experienced and knowledgeable person, vomit was at the back of his throat when he saw the sight. The other disciple's face turned green as well, and it was evident that he was on the verge of puking from disgust. Even Lin Long's face turned white. Among all of them, only Yi Qingtang's expression was the same as usual as she took a calm look at the tragic hell-looking place. "We were worried that we would spoil the clues, so we have never touched the things here," the apothecary said softly after seeing everyone's expression. After Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was washed in blood in a night, they did not even dare to move anything in the village and only waited for the Xianling sect to send people over to investigate. Thus, they did not touch anything in the village, and the place remained the way it was initially. Moreover, they had already used some powder which could prevent the corpses from decomposing rapidly, though the fact that they had decomposed could not be covered, and the powder was only able to stall for time. Zhou Xian faked a calm front and nodded, but the tightly frowned brows revealed his emotions at that instant. "Do all these skulls belong to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village?" "Yes." The apothecary nodded and raised a hand, pointing to the skull at the top of the mountain of skulls. "That skull belongs to our village master, Wu Qingze. In the layer below it, those skulls belong to the wife of the village master and the 3 young village masters." Zhou Xian did not want to look at those frightening skulls anymore, but it was not convenient for him to show it. After all, these still required to be investigated. Suddenly, Zhou Xian looked another way and at Yi Qingtang, whose expression was the same as usual. Chapter 213, Junior Sister Yi. Zhou Xian suddenly called Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang lifted her eyes slightly. Zhou Xian's face was pale as he was disgusted by the skulls. Yi Qingtang's mouth tilted. "Junior Sister Yi, this is your first time attending a sect mission. I will not risk your life for some dangerous tasks, but you need some training. The skulls here may contain some clues of the tragedy at the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Thus, you must check through every single skull here carefully to look for clues," Zhou Xian said in a noble way. It seemed that he really picked the best task for Yi Qingtang wholeheartedly. The 2 disciples sneered as Zhou Xian finished his words. Frankly speaking, if they took a few more looks at the rotten skulls, they would be vomiting. They would never touch the skull for investigation. Furthermore, the skulls had decayed to the extent that there were little or no clues left at all. They definitely did not want to waste energy on this kind of task. However, they were delighted if Yi Qingtang could take the task. Lin Long frowned upon hearing Zhou Xian's words. Yi Qingtang clearly noticed what a hypocrite Zhou Xian was. Surprisingly, she did not reject Zhou Xian's proposal. She shrugged her shoulder and agreed. Okay. No one expected that Yi Qingtang would agree with that so easily. Even an adult male might not be able to face the Rotten Skull Tower without fear. How could a young lady be capable of such a feat? However, Yi Qingtang agreed without hesitation. Zhou Xian was expecting Yi Qingtang to reject his proposal. His mouth twitched. But when he remembered that Yi Qingtang would spend her time with the rotten skulls, he felt more relieved. Thank you for the trouble, junior sister Yi. Zhou Xian faked a smile and looked towards the apothecary. There are only the skulls of the 300 people from the Spirit Condensation Mountain village here. Where are their bodies? The corpses are scattered around the village. I will show you the way. The apothecary answered. Zhou Xian lifted his eyebrows slightly and took a glance at Yi Qingtang. Okay then, he said. Junior village master, I'm afraid you have to accompany this lady here to identify these skulls, the apothecary said towards Wu Jing. The handsome young man who remained silent nodded without any expressions. The apothecary then led Zhou Xian and the rest to other places in the village. Lin Long wanted to stay, but Yi Qingtang shook her head. Lin Long paused for a moment and followed up with Zhou Xian. Yi Qingtang chuckled as Zhou Xian and the rest left. How could she not know Zhou Xian's intentions? However, Zhou Xian wanted to scare her with these rotten skulls, but he would be disappointed soon. What kind of bloody scene had she not witnessed before in the tortures of her previous life? She even spent days under rotten corpses to hide from the killings. How could she be scared of a few hundred skulls? Such a joke. Yi Qingtang withdrew her sight. She did not bother about Zhou Xian's little trick. She only cared about the tragedy at the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. In her previous life, the tragedy remained unsolved after 200 years, and this was Yi Qingtang's first sect mission. It would not be good news for a new disciple to fail their first mission. Chapter 214. Though the skulls were sprinkled with powder that delayed the decaying process, the degree of decaying of the flesh was still very obvious. Furthermore, the skulls were exposed in the open yard, and the crows that were attracted by the decaying smell pecked the skulls. Among the flesh, pus that came from the decaying matter had covered the entire skulls, making them look extremely disgusting. However, Yi Qingtang seemed to not notice the disgusting scene. She walked to the skull tower directly and took down the top skull. The moment the skull was removed, the whole skull tower seemed to experience severe vibrations. The 300 skulls rolled down and fell beside Yi Qingtang's feet. Yi Qingtang was surrounded by the hundreds of rotten skulls within a second. Wu Zheng, who remained silent throughout, shivered slightly. The horrifying scene was hard to look steadily at. However, when Wu Zheng looked up, he was shocked by the young lady who seemed to be standing in a scene of carnage. The young lady stood among the flesh with the sunlight shining on her. There was no trace of fear on her delicate face. Her eyes were lowered to stare at the rotten skull in her hands. When the sunlight reached her long eyelashes, she appeared so mysterious. She seemed to be smiling with her lips tilted slightly. It seemed like she was holding a piece of jewelry instead of a disgusting skull. Yi Qingtang flipped the skull in her hand to have a view of all sides. She just allowed the pus to drop through her fingers freely. She scanned through the skull that belonged to the village master Wu Qingze. Wu Zheng had never met such a young lady before. She could still remain that calm in front of the bloody scenes. Yi Qingtang stared at the skull for quite a while. She suddenly looked up and asked Wu Zheng, who was stunned at the side. This belongs to Wu Qingze. Wu Zheng pulled himself out of astonishment and nodded slightly. Yi Qingtang did not ask further. She just took a look at the skull again and left it at the side. She then picked up another skull. Are you the adopted son of the village master? Yi Qingtang checked through the skull on her hand and asked questions that seemed to be irrelevant. Yes. Wu Jing answered respectfully. He had to be polite and respectful in front of a sect disciple even if he was the master's own son. When did you come to the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village? Enchanting seemed to be asking Wu Jing, but her sight never left the skulls. Wu Jing looked down and said, "When I was still an infant, father brought me back to the village." "Where were you when the tragedy happened?" Enchanting looked towards Wu Jing. Based on her memory from her previous life, the whole force collapsed after the tragedy. But she had never heard of people mentioning about the adopted son Wu Jing. "Father asked me to send the young lady of the Donghua family back. She came for a birthday celebration," Wu Jing replied. Chapter 215. The night before the tragedy was Wu Cheng's 50-years-old birthday celebration. Many guests came, and the celebration lasted until midnight. The Donghua family that Wu Jing mentioned was another prestigious family nearby. There was a rumor that the two families had agreed on the marriage alliance. Enchanting nodded and did not speak anymore. It seemed that all the questions before were just some random thoughts. After that, besides asking Wu Jing about the origin of the skulls, there was no further conversation. Before the sunset, Zhou Xian and the rest who walked through the entire village were all very pale. The Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was not small, but the 300 corpses were everywhere in the village. Everywhere that they could see was covered by blood. The decaying smell made them feel like they were walking in hell. "Senior Brother Zhou, the situation of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village seems to be more complicated than what we thought," a disciple who vomited many times said. Zhou Xian nodded in acknowledgement. Everything they saw today was bloody, but there were no useful clues at all. Everyone's head in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was chopped off, and the wound was very neat. There were no traces of fighting beside the corpses. "It's not revenge. If it were revenge, how could they just succumb so easily?" Zhou Xian contemplated for a while and looked towards the Lin Long, who was walking at the back. "Junior sister Lin, did you discover anything?" Lin Long shook her head. Zhou Xian frowned and felt a bit annoyed. How could they accomplish the mission without any clues? "There are no clues here." "What about the skulls?" one of the disciples said. Zhou Xian was stunned for a while and then remembered that Enchanting was still in that mountain of skulls. He sneered and said, "We shall see junior sister Yes investigation results. What can she find out? I don't think she will be able to find any clues at all. I suppose that she was terrified by the skulls and did not even dare to touch the skulls. Senior Brother Zhou, Enchanting is just a burden. She can't do anything besides finding more troubles for us." One of the disciples twitched his mouth and did not expect any results from Enchanting. "It's her first time attending a sect mission. We should tolerate her even if she creates some trouble. We are all her senior brothers and senior sisters, so we must look after her," Zhou Xian said with a strong sense of righteousness. "Senior Brother Zhou, you are too kind to her. She did not feel grateful to your kindness at all," another disciple said coldly. Zhou Xian did not say much. He just waved his hand. "Don't mention it anymore. We shall go check out the situation at the yard." In the eyes of the two disciples, Zhou Xian was taking care of Enchanting in all perspectives. Even if Enchanting died, they would not find Zhou Xian suspicious at all. And this was what Zhou Xian wanted. The two disciples were obviously misled by Zhou Xian's fake kindness and looked down on Enchanting, who only possessed a red spirit root. The group of people walked into the yard and waited to see Enchanting's pale and panicking face. However, they were shocked by the view in front of them when they reached the yard. Chapter 216. There was an odd harmony in the bloody yard. The skulls that were stacked up previously were now arranged neatly in a few lines on the ground. All of them were facing the same direction without any flaws. It seemed that countless corpses were buried underground, leaving only the skulls above the ground. Those pairs of empty eyes stared straight at the direction where Zhou Xian came from. The disciple who almost vomited previously was shocked by the scene. His legs trembled and almost fell to the ground. What the hell? Enchanting, who was wiping off the dirt on her hand, raised her head when she heard the scream. There seemed to be a faint smile on her delicate face, and her eyes were half closed, looking towards Zhou Xian and the rest. My fellow senior brothers and senior sisters, how's the investigation? Enchanting asked in a lazy voice. Her tone seemed to be filled with slight sarcasm. Zhou Xian was stunned when he saw Enchanting standing there and smiling to him. She did not seem to be affected at all. What was Enchanting planning to do? Was she really a 15-year-old young lady? How could a young lady remain so calm in front of all the rotten skulls? If it was other normal people, they might be scared to death. Besides Zhou Xian, the other two disciples who were unhappy with Enchanting now stared at her in horror. Zhou Xian suppressed his astonishment. He did not answer Enchanting directly. Instead, he scanned through the skulls and said, "Junior Sister Yi, what is this for?" The people of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village died mysteriously. Even though you are still playful at your age, you should not play with the skulls of the dead people. Zhou Xian sounded like he was trying to educate Enchanting. However, he was actually criticizing her for not respecting the dead. Enchanting sneered. She bent down and picked up one skull. Zhou Xian sneered secretly after witnessing Enchanting's move, but he did not show anything on his face. "Junior Sister Yi, that's not appropriate," he said and frowned. He then looked towards the apothecary and tried to apologize. "My junior sister is still young and does not know her manners well. Please understand." Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was a side force of the Xianling sect. Under any circumstances, disrespecting the dead was out of the manner. The apothecary was stunned, but he did not dare to blame a sect disciple. He could only shake his head. Zhou Xian then looked towards Enchanting and commanded. "Junior Sister Yi, do not do such unreasonable things. We are here for an investigation, not to mess around. Put back the skulls now." Zhou Xian's command made the other two disciples dislike Enchanting even more. They were surprised by Enchanting's courage, but disrespecting the dead was really inappropriate. "Junior Sister Yi, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under our sect. Do not ruin our fame." One of the disciples was displeased. Enchanting raised her eyebrows slightly. She smiled when she noticed how the rest were convinced by Zhou Xian. She ignored Zhou Xian's cankered face and looked straight to the skull on her hand. The degree of the decay of these 300 skulls here is very severe. However, there is no obvious wound besides normal decay. Chapter 217. Zhou Xian was stunned a little when Enchanting suddenly spoke. "Junior Sister Yi, there are 300 skulls here. We need further investigation to understand the situation. You should not be so certain with your judgment. Our investigation is closely related to the 300 lives here. We should examine every single skull. You cannot just conclude with a few sentences. Take this seriously." Zhou Xian sneered. The other two disciples also showed unpleasant expressions. They would not believe that Enchanting could investigate the 300 skulls within such a short period of time and reach a conclusion. Enchanting smiled when the rest challenged her. Her white fingers swiped through the pus on the decayed flash. She forced open the mouth of the skull and pulled out the rotten tongue. "Senior brother Zhou, look carefully. Is there anything abnormal with the tongue?" Zhou Xian frowned as he felt disgusted by the rotten tongue. However, he did not show anything on his face and pretended to be calm. Just a rotten tongue. Enchanting chuckled and pulled out the dagger from her waist. She used the dagger to scale down a layer of mucus from the tongue and put it in front of Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian almost vomited when he suddenly saw the disgusting mucus in front of his eyes. Senior brother Zhou, the tongue is severely rotten indeed. But the residue of the Duanyuan grass is well preserved. Duanyuan grass. Zhou Xian's face changed. He controlled his impulse to vomit and took a closer look at the mucus. It was true that there was some dark green plant residue among the mucus. The residue was very tiny, and it was easily neglected if one did not examine carefully. Duanyuan grass is a type of poisonous grass grown at the edge of the cliff. It is not fatal, but it will cause people to faint within a short period of time. The person will lose all senses and will not wake up no matter how noisy the surroundings are. Furthermore, it does not contain any smell. If it is crushed and put into tea, people will only treat it as tea leaves. No one will be able to detect that. Enchanting smiled and explained. The night when the people of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village were murdered was the village master Wu Cheng's birthday celebration. They were busy for the whole night and were definitely exhausted in the morning. It's absolutely normal for them to drink some tea to quench their thirst. However, the tea that was mixed with Duanyuan grass was enough to make everyone in the village faint. I'm afraid they didn't even know how they died when they were murdered. Enchanting spoke slowly. However, Zhou Xian and the rest were pale when they heard what she said. They had noticed earlier that all the victims did not fight back before they were murdered. They suspected that someone poisoned them and tested the corpses with a silver needle. But the silver needle did not turn black. They thought that their direction was wrong, as even the most basic drug could turn the silver needle black. They had never thought that the murderer would use Duanyuan grass, which did not need any extraction processes. Duanyuan grass could make people faint, but it was not poisonous. Thus, no matter how they tried, they would have never found out the conclusion by using the silver needle. Furthermore, Duanyuan grass was crushed to powder. If it entered the stomach and was mixed with the flesh, no one could find out anything. Chapter 218. The residue on the tongue was mixed with blood. How many people could notice that? Zhou Xian's face clouded up. It was funny to recall how he mocked at Enchanting previously. They were looking everywhere for the whole afternoon to no avail, yet Enchanting alone found out the hidden clues from such insignificant details. Burden. If she was counted as a burden, then, the rest of them could be called useless. Zhou Xian, who tried to make things difficult for Enchanting, was embarrassed now. All the sarcastic things he said were punching his own face now. Junior sister Yi, you are good at finding details, Zhou Xian said and gritted his teeth. Enchanting lifted her eyebrows and said, Senior brother Zhou, do you want to take the residue for further investigation? She moved the dagger with mucus closer to Zhou Xian. The foul smell immediately flew into Zhou Xian's nose. He stepped back to prevent any contact with the mucus. Junior brother Lu, what are you waiting for? Keep the things here. Zhou Xian tried to remain calm as he called one of the disciples at the side. That disciple had vomited a few times by the scenes in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. His face was as pale as a piece of paper when Zhou Xian called his name. His unpleasant face was a clear comparison with Enchanting's smile. Junior brother Lu could not help but go forward and take over the dagger. His body was full of goosebumps instantly. Enchanting smiled as she saw the unpleasant faces. Only some of the skulls here have Duanyuan grass residue, and some are not obvious. If you want to look closely, you need to take their tongues, junior sister Yi. Zhou Xian stopped Enchanting before she finished her sentence. He could guess what she was about to say. The sect disciples here all came from prestigious families. They lived a comfortable life when they were young. Though they were requested to attend the mission, they would never use their hands to touch the filthy stuff. However, Enchanting did not seem to be bothered by that at all. None of the rest wanted to scale mucus down from the dead people's mouths. They could feel the goosebumps by just imagining that. It's getting late today. We should not rush now. Tomorrow, I will ask the apothecary to find someone to do that. We need to analyze other things as well. Since we have figured out that it was all caused by Duanyuan grass, we should discuss the potential suspects who could have used the Duanyuan grass. Zhou Xian tried to speak in a normal way, but he felt constricted by Enchanting's behavior and words. Enchanting just shrugged her shoulder and did not say anything. Apothecary, please lead us to the place that we will be staying at. We will figure out the murderer based on the investigation today. Zhou Xian looked towards the apothecary and said, "Yes." The apothecary replied respectfully. The apothecary and Wu Jing then led the group to their living place. Only after the gate of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village was closed, Zhou Xian and the rest felt slightly relieved. Chapter 219. The apothecary still found a relatively nice house for Zhou Xian and the rest to stay even though the Spirit Condensation Mountain village was destroyed. He did not dare to neglect these disciples of the Xianling sect. We will go pack our luggage now and gather at the level 1 hall later to discuss the clues we have found today. Zhou Xian acted as a leader and gave out commands. No one had any objections, and everyone returned to their respective rooms. Zhou Xian held his composure until the moment he closed his door. He quickly removed his shirt and washed his hands repeatedly with water. The corpses of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village were there for quite a long time. Though they were spread with powder, it could not slow down the speed of decay. Furthermore, the weather was not cold, and it was possible to have a plague outbreak. That was the reason why Zhou Xian did not touch any single corpse today. Where does Enchanting come from? Zhou Xian finally washed off the stink on his body and then remembered Enchanting's behaviors today. He intended to make things difficult for her by asking her to investigate the skulls. However, she was not scared at all and found out the only clue. Zhou Xian felt slightly embarrassed, but he was not in a rush to eliminate her now. Zhou Xian clearly remembered the revenge for Zhou Chu and the orders from senior brother Ning Luo. However, he realized the value of Enchanting today. If he could make use of her to find out the truth of the tragedy in Spirit Condensation Mountain village, it would save a lot of troubles for himself. He could eliminate her afterward. Then, he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Zhou Xian was proud of himself for such brilliant plans. He sat lazily in his chair with his legs crossed. He leaned on the back of the chair, and his eyes were cunning. Enchanting, you should treasure the time you have left with and use your brain to help me complete my mission. While Zhou Xian was scheming against Enchanting, Enchanting left her room after washing up. When she reached the hall, there were no other disciples yet. There was only one tall and handsome young man standing in the hall. Wu Jing heard the footsteps and saw Enchanting coming down. He withdrew his sight and lowered his head humbly. "Lady Yi." Wu Jing addressed her with respect. Enchanting smiled and walked downstairs. She sat on a random chair and used one of her hands to support her head and looked towards Wu Jing. Wu Jing was very tall and had delicate features on his face. He was not that shockingly handsome, but his face was flawless when one observed closely. "Don't be so polite, young sir. Just sit down and talk." Enchanting smiled at him. Wu Jing hesitated for a while and eventually sat down. "Since you are adopted by Wu Qingze, do you know who your real parents are? Enchanting pretended to be bored and threw out a random question. My parents are normal hunters. They were killed while hunting. Father adopted me when I was still young back then. Wu Jing replied. Young sir, the village master and the junior masters died during the tragedy. I'm afraid that you will be the heir of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village in the future, right? Enchanting chuckled and asked. Chapter 220. Wu Jing was stunned. He raised his eyes to look at Enchanting, and a trace of shock appeared in the pair of clear eyes. Lady Yi, are you suspecting that? Enchanting smiled but did not reply to Wu Jing. Instead, she murmured to herself. There is a cliff behind the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and there should have Duanyuan grass. Only close people would have the chance to put the Duanyuan grass in tea after the celebration. Wu Jing's eyes sparkled. He did not say anything and lowered his eyes. Enchanting took a glimpse at Wu Jing and smiled. Since it's not done by strangers, it must be people who are close. Young sir, did Wu Qingze mistreat anyone supporting the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village before? Wu Jing frowned and shook his head. Father is always a kind village master. Hundreds of families nearby benefited from Father. They were not requested to submit any offerings, as Father treated them as family. If Lady Yi has any questions, you can ask around. Enchanting nodded. Actually, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village always had a good reputation. There were no rumors about Wu Qingze mistreating the people here. Lin Long walked down slowly when they were chatting. She exchanged a glance with Enchanting and sat at the side. While they were waiting for the rest, they heard a range of footsteps from the second level. One of the disciples rushed to the staircase. Senior Sister Lin. Something's wrong. Junior Brother Liu. You should go and take a look now. The disciple was panicking, and the three people were stunned slightly after hearing his words. Lin Long stood up immediately and dashed to the second floor. Enchanting and Wu Jing also followed up. They soon arrived at the room of Junior Brother Liu. Junior Brother Liu, who came back with the rest, was extremely pale. He fell by the side of the bed, and his whole body was shivering. His clothes were only half removed when he collapsed onto the ground and lost his consciousness. What happened? Zhou Xian also came over. He glanced at Junior Brother Liu, who fell onto the ground, and his face suddenly changed. I don't know as well. Just now I wanted to ask him to go downstairs, but I knocked his door for a while, and no one came. Thus, I pushed open the door. I did not expect that. He was lying on the ground when I came in, the disciple who went to call up the rest replied in fear. Zhou Xian put up an unpleasant face. Junior Brother Liu was normal just now. What happened to him within such a short period of time? Help him up first. Zhou Xian commanded. The disciple immediately helped Junior Brother Liu up to his bed, and Wu Jing went to invite the apothecary over at the same time. What happened? The apothecary rushed over, and he appeared to be very nervous. Please help to take a look at my junior brother. Zhou Xian requested once he saw the apothecary. Sure. The apothecary nodded immediately and went forward to do a checkup for Junior Brother Liu. Chapter 221. Everyone stood at the side to wait for the apothecary. However, the apothecary's face was getting more and more unpleasant. When he lifted up Junior Brother Liu's top, he stood up in shock and stepped back. Blood plague. It's the blood plague. The apothecary voice also changed. Everyone froze when the apothecary shouted. There was a patch of red spots on Junior Brother Liu's body. The red spots were getting clearer as his body shivered. Zhou Xian immediately felt cold sweat on his face. Blood plague was an extremely fatal plague that usually broke out after a natural disaster in the affected areas. When corpses piled up and decayed, blood plague might break out. Zhou Xian was still worried about this, but he did not expect it to happen for real. The disciple who helped junior brother Lu was taken aback when he heard about the blood plague. He fell to the ground and started shivering. I just touched him. Senior brother Zhou, I just touched him. The blood plague could be spread through physical contact. It spread very fast, and the whole blood system would be contaminated in a short period of time. It was very difficult to cure that. People who cultivate were more scared of the damage towards their spirit roots. At the early stage of the blood plague, the contaminated blood would corrode the spirit root. Even if the person were cured, the damaged spirit root could not be restored. The spirit root was the foundation for cultivation. If it were damaged, the cultivation road would terminate right there. Zhou Xian could hear the buzzing sound in his head. He sighed in relief that he did not touch any corpse today. If not, he would be the person lying there. Apothecary, please help to take a look at the rest of my juniors, Zhou Xian said and took a deep breath. His eyesight landed on Enchanting. They did not have much contact with the corpses today. Junior brother Lu only touched the corpse once. The closest contact he had was the dagger he took over from Enchanting, the one with the pus on it. If junior brother Lu was infected by that, Enchanting. There was a trace of malice appearing in Zhou Xian's eyes. He might not need to eliminate Enchanting by himself. Furthermore, it would take a period of time for the blood plague to be fatal. He could ask Enchanting to continue the investigation during this period of time. That would be the best ending. The apothecary did a checkup for the rest of the three people. There were red spots on the arms of the shocked disciple and Lin Long. Their state of infection was much lighter when compared to junior brother Lu. However, Enchanting, who had the most contact with the corpses, did not have any trace of the blood plague. Zhou Xian was surprised by the results. He did not forget to go through the checkup, and luckily, there was no red spot on his body. However, among the 5 people who came, 3 were infected with the blood plague. That was not good news. Zhou Xian frowned. Enchanting was a little surprised when she saw the few not-so-obvious red spots on Lin Long's arm. There was no information about the blood plague in her previous life when the tragedy of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village happened. However, why did the blood plague suddenly occur? Chapter 222 Enchanting felt something suspicious as the blood plague did not occur in her previous life. She did not care about the rest, but Lin Long was also infected. Apothecary, do you have any ways to control the blood plague? Zhou Xian showed an unpleasant expression. The blood plague is not fatal yet. I don't know the way to cure it completely, but I will provide some herbal soup to delay its spread in the body. The apothecary was not very confident. It would not be so terrifying if a plague could be cured so easily. The blood plague spreads very fast. We should dispose of the corpses of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village as soon as possible to prevent others from getting infected. The apothecary suggested. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. He did not give an immediate reply. He scanned through the faces of the rest, but another thought emerged in his brain. This mission was assigned by the sect. They would be punished if they could not accomplish it. Furthermore, they bribed the warden in order to assign Enchanting to this task. If they did not accomplish the mission and got exposed for the bribe, Zhou Xian would definitely be punished heavily as the leader. Additionally, if they returned to the sect now, he would lose the chance to eliminate Enchanting. It was easy to explain the situation to his brother, but for Ning Luo, Zhou Xian squinted his eyes and took a breath secretly. We have not found out the murderer of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village yet. If we dispose of the corpses now, we would lose a lot of clues. Since Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under our sect, we will definitely continue the investigation. You only need to block the entire mountain village and spread the powder that can deter the plague at the borders. Warn the rest not to approach the area, and we will handle the rest. Zhou Xian looked at the apothecary and ordered. The apothecary was stunned as he did not expect that Zhou Xian was still not willing to dispose of the corpses. The blood plague might spread to innocent people anytime if they left the corpses there. Sir, do we need to inform the sect that the blood plague is spreading? Zhou Xian waved his hand to reject his suggestion. We are the sect disciples, and we are proud of our sect. Since Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under us and 300 people died in misery, we will not stop due to a little obstacle. Zhou Xian was full of justice. Though the apothecary was still worried, he did not try to convince him again. Sir, you are such a righteous disciple of the Xianling sect. I really admire you, and we will never forget your kindness. Yi Qingtang sneered as she observed how Zhou Xian's expressions changed. When did Zhou Xian's temper change? He decided to stay for investigation when he knew that he might get infected by the blood plague anytime. She did not recall that Zhou Xian was such a righteous person. Zhou Xian turned his head when Yi Qingtang was staring at him. Junior sister Yi, we need to control the spread of the blood plague in junior brother Lu and rest, but we need to accomplish the sect mission as well. Thus, you will be in charge of the investigation now. I will take care of the rest, Zhou Xian said and smiled. He showed a sense of justice, but his words shocked Lin Long. Zhou Xian still asked Yi Qingtang to investigate when there was the blood plague in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. What was he up to? Chapter 223. Even Lin Long, who always appeared to be indifferent, felt enraged towards Zhou Xian. Apparently, he tried to make things difficult on purpose. Yi Qingtang smiled at Zhou Xian, who was full of cunning. She was still contemplating why Zhou Xian became so kind, but actually, he left this inhumane task for her. If she accomplished the task, Zhou Xian would definitely take the credit from her. If she failed, he would not have to touch the corpses and did not have the chance to get infected. He would not lose anything. He would gain all the credits eventually and suppress the rest with the sect's honor. The few people who were infected with the blood plague might not be able to leave this place anymore. Such a perfect plan. Zhou Xian squinted his eyes as he did not receive any reaction from Yi Qingtang. Junior sister Yi, we had never looked down on you as a new disciple during this mission. And we did not create any troubles for you deliberately just because you possess the red spirit root. We took care for you the whole time, and now that junior sister Lin and the rest are infected with the blood plague, are you willing to let them investigate when they are ill? As a human being, you need to learn how to be gracious. Do not be so selfish. The beautiful words Zhou Xian said to Yi Qingtang sounded so pleasant. Yi Qingtang's eyes darkened. However, she laughed after a short while. She glanced at Zhou Xian's hypocritic face. Senior brother Zhou is correct. I will be in charge of the investigation. Rest assured. Yi Qingtang replied. It was out of everyone's expectation that Yi Qingtang compromised. Lin Long frowned and wanted to pull Yi Qingtang to stop her decision. She withdrew her hand when she realized that she could not touch Yi Qingtang when she was infected with the blood plague. I shall say thank you first then. Zhou Xian smiled and gave a few orders to the apothecary before he left. The shocked disciple immediately asked the apothecary to check his situation. Lin Long threw a glance towards Yi Qingtang and left the room. Yi Qingtang followed. You should not have agreed to that, Lin Long said and frowned to Yi Qingtang when they were outside the room. Yi Qingtang's eyes softened. We have to accomplish the mission. Senior Sister Lin, you just rest for these few days, and I will find out the truth. Lin Long shook her head and sighed. I saw the competition between you and Zhou Chu the other day. Zhou Chu was injured mysteriously afterward, but I knew it was because of you. Zhou Xian is not a generous person, and he will not let go so easily. You are lucky that you are not infected with the blood plague. You are killing yourself if you go back to the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. Lin Long did not know why she said those words to Yi Qingtang, but she always felt that Yi Qingtang was different from the rest. Though they did not talk much in the past, she took extra care for her. Yi Qingtang lowered her eyes to hide the smile she had. Senior Sister Lin is still a cold outside but warm inside person as in the previous life. Senior Sister Lin, you don't need to worry for me. I will take care of myself. Yi Qingtang then took out a bottle of elixir and handed it over to Lin Long. The elixir can't cure the blood plague, but it can nourish the breath and blood in your body. You should keep it for now. The Si family master asked Si Bai to give her the elixirs for emergency purposes when she left the Lin town. Lin Long took over the elixirs and sighed softly. Thank you, if you insist. Then, be more cautious. Sure. Yi Qingtang smiled and replied, but she promised to herself that she would not allow Lin Long to suffer from the blood plague. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.